Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader once again, aka Damien. I am down in the dungeon of lost comics, but I'm here to give you my comic book countdown for the comics that came out last Wednesday. Today is Tuesday as I record, so tomorrow will be another batch of comics, hopefully a lot less than I got this past Wednesday, where I got really more than I could handle, more than I could chew off. Um, there'll be a total of 18 comics in this countdown, and I did not read my Green Lantern because I am way behind on that, and I did not read Heavy Metal just because I ran out of time. I had too much to read. Because not only did I guess I had 20 comics plus, um, some of them, like this one, obviously is a lot to read, and at a chunky price too. My goodness, even with my 25% off, that's a lot of money. But it actually looks pretty good just thumbing through it. And then I also got kind of a release of this past Wednesday, a original graphic novel by indie superstars Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, the favorites of many people in the indie world. And I only managed to read about a little more than a third of this, Reckless, which turns out they're going to put out 3 Reckless graphic novels in this 12-month period, coming 12-month period. But I liked it, but I was finding it a little more, as far as I've gotten so far, a little more genre formulaic than their usual. I mean, they always play with genre forms, but they play with them more, and here it seems more adhering to the form, if that makes sense, which made it a little less exciting to me than I had hoped for. But I put it down because it was the first thing I started reading, and I put it down because I thought, well, I want to keep doing these weekly videos, so I better get to the other stuff. And I also got some back issues and some trades this past Wednesday, and one other trade, which I haven't gotten to. Although I've thumbed through a lot of back issues, and I've kind of, because of the upcoming holidays, life just got busier, and there were so many comics this week, and I've actually spent a lot of my reading time just poring through the news, wondering what the heck our president is doing now. What will he do? What is the fate of our nation? But anyway, hopefully this too shall pass. So on to the comics. It's very tricky with 18 comics to really be fair at all. I mean, I'm never fair, so I don't know. To really get a beat on things, something could come in at number 9 and be a great comic, I suppose, or one that it's all about my enjoyment, right? So the comic I enjoyed the least, and I put it number 18. I'm sad to say, and it may be very uncool of me, to put a Gilbert Hernandez comic at the bottom of my list. This is a psychodrama illustrated, and in theory it's about the character Fritz, the aging actress. And in fact, there's even kind of a explanation of who she is here. But then the rest of the issue, called Little Ones, is a bunch of different voices from, I'm guessing, some border town, maybe in California or somewhere in the U.S., where they're about to build the wall, and different people's reactions and situations to the wall. I think they're all, or almost all, supposed to be Latino or Latinx. It doesn't use the term Latinx in here, so I don't have a grip on that term, to tell you the truth. But the thing is, it was just not very compelling. I mean, it's good to hear all these voices, but it just didn't grab me, didn't take me anywhere, just felt flat and kind of, I don't know. Maybe if this was reportage of that you knew these were the comments of real people. There probably are, of people that Hernandez knows, and he's heard different points of view on the building of the wall. It also feels like 3 or 4 years too late. Maybe that was also. I have not read issue 2. I read issue 1 and somehow misplaced issue 2 and thought I'd jump in, and it certainly was readable on its own, but not a whole lot of fun for me. Maybe I'm a Philistine. Then at number 17, Batman's Grave. At this point I was just glad it was over, despite continuing awesome art and coloring. I don't know. I think I get what Warren Ellis is doing here, but I don't care, and it's not. It didn't build properly. The whole series ends up now, by the end for me, even though I enjoyed parts of it, to now have been kind of a waste of time. And if I could sell these comics, I probably would, although they look pretty. So then in at number 16, perhaps a case of expectations too high, was the new comic from Alexis Zurit, I forget, Alexis Zurit, called Night Hunters. And I just had high expectations of Zurit himself because I loved his art and his imagination and his crazy outlaw biker attitude exhibited in his comic Space Riders. So this one, Night Hunters, it kind of became more interesting towards the end as we kind of saw where it was going. It's a extremely dystopian. I think maybe it's set in Venezuela or maybe it's set in Mexico. I think I read in the back. I think that he was originally from Venezuela, and I can't find it. There's a long kind of text piece at the end. Anyway, it's an extremely dystopian world where you're either the police or the victims of the police in this crazy city. And I think maybe I just wasn't in the mood for such a dark dystopia, and I was hoping to be more visually wowed. But there's certainly lots of good visual stuff going on here, but it just, so that it was hurt by expectations maybe. And just by grimness when I wanted some fun. And probably a bit of the same with Barbalian, which I put in at number 15. But really here, the biggest problem was the art, and especially the colors by Jordi Belair. Often cited as one of the best colors in the business, but if that's the case, I just don't agree with her coloring decisions in this comic. But I think on top of that, maybe the Gabriel Hernandez Walta did not live up to my expectations for him either. And the story, again, is just very grim and sad, with no spark of humor or fun to it, I felt, unlike perhaps some of the other Black Hammer comics, the Black Hammer World comics. It is co-plotted by Jeff Lemire and written by this person named Tate Brombal. So perhaps Tate Brombal brings the lack of the lighter touch that we see a little bit sometimes with Jeff Lemire. I mean, Jeff Lemire's stories are always a bit sad, but there's also something else going on. But I really, maybe because it's the Christmas time or things are just still very oppressive in the news, I want my comic books to be fun. Or maybe I just always want my comic books to be fun. And now the next comic book I pick up that I've still ranked kind of low is kind of disproving me. Although I stand by my statement. But I put Vampyrus Carmilla, number 1, at number 14. And actually, those first 3 were the comics that most were downers to me. And I pretty much enjoyed everything else coming up. And even bits of those other ones, of course, had something good to them. But so this is the latest from Warrant Publishing, who also publishes The Creeps. And once I read this, I realized it's just another Creeps. It's not. Maybe the flavor is slightly sexier because we sometimes get sometimes our character who introduces the stories is in the nude. But But the backstory of the vampiress herself is really, really weak. And it might have been better if they just had her introducing stories and not create a backstory for her. But I really would have liked her to be like Vampira, who she's an imitation of. Sorry, Vampyrilla, who she's an imitation of. For her to have her own stories. And maybe Vampyrilla, I don't know, did she start out having her own stories? And she had a more fun background than just... The Vampyrus Carmilla is just assigned by Satan to keep some monsters occupied by telling them stories so they won't cause him trouble. It had the usual gang of artists that I'm used to from the Creeps, and it was good to see them. But maybe I don't know if these stories were lesser than in the Creeps, but they somehow my perception of them was that all of them were a little extra goofy, or not all of them, but enough of them were a little extra goofy. I don't know. Something happened with my expectations, but I really do like a lot of the regular artists in the Creeps and now in Vampyrus Carmilla. I kind of wish each one were just quarterly. Maybe they're bi-monthly, so now we get one of these a month if you're buying them all like I am. So, there was fun there. Maybe I've read too many of these Creeps style, cheesy, let's quickly get to the twist ending, no matter how forced it is, stories. But I'm not dropping it or anything like that for now. Rising up and more enjoyable was post Americana. I think, again, I maybe ranked this a bit low because it was so grim. It was a very familiar, grim post-apocalypse. The hidden away society, the underground, and then the more savage society above ground after some big apocalypse. They don't name it. I don't know if it was nuclear or not. The art is pretty good. It's not as good as Steve Scrocchi's. This is all written and drawn by Steve Scrocchi. Not as wonderful as his work on Maestros. He also worked on We Stand on Guard and did great work there. And it's colored by Dave Stewart. And I don't know, both the artist and the colors go for a very stiff, formal look, if that makes sense. And so it doesn't have any grace or flow to it, which adds to the grimness of the story, I guess. And also the sense of unreality of the story, really. It's very, very bloody. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for that. But I'm not gonna drop it. I'm gonna see where it goes, at least for another issue. Rye number 10 is the end of this round of Rye, but they basically tell us at the end that there's more to come, which is good because it doesn't feel like we've had much closure at all. It just says Rye will return and shows us a cover, or what I take to be a cover drawing. I've really enjoyed this, but this was not, given that I knew this was kind of the end of the current story, it was not deeply satisfying. It did raise some interesting things to come, but didn't really resolve anything, and didn't, I don't know, like there was a character who died, who I would have liked to have seen more of, and would have helped in the mix. And so I enjoyed it, but again, expectations, I guess. So I put that at number 12. And really now we're all into comics that I thought were quite good. I put Second Coming at number 11. Second Coming, Only Begotten Son, kind of the second story in the Second Coming universe, I guess, by Mark Russell and his very able artistic team of Richard Pace, Leonard Kirk, and Andy Troy. So it's a pretty satisfying comic. This Only Begotten Son story, Second Coming story was pretty much complete after the first 6 issues. And so now this new season of it, so to speak, seems in a sense unnecessary, but I was kind of excited for their take on the Krypton Superman mythos. But Mark Russell used it a lot to just spoof our own society in too obvious of a way, so that while I enjoyed it, it didn't thrill me. So that's where I put it, kind of in my middling section. But I'm still looking forward to the next issue, because it does tie into the present day, where our superhero Sunspot, I think that's his name, that his girlfriend is pregnant now because God allowed them to get pregnant, even though he's an alien, and could not give birth, could not procreate with a human. It's kind of weird when you think about it, going deeper into this Superman story and all its sci-fi-ness, but still having the God and Jesus factor there too. What, did God have a hand in the destruction of their version of Krypton? That I don't think they're going to go into that sort of stuff. The what's God doing on other planets kind of thing. So then at number 10 was Big Girls. This nicely moves along the plot. I was watching someone on YouTube, or some discussion on YouTube, of Big Girls, saying, pretty much you can see where all this is going, and they've enjoyed it, but they don't feel like there needs to be very many more issues. And I think that got into my head a bit when I came to read issue 5 here. And so I was more looking at it in terms of, well, what do we have here to build a long-term story on? And it feels like, this was issue 5, feels like it could wrap up with issue 6 or 7. And I was just viewing it kind of critically suddenly for being a less rich story, although I'd been really admiring it in the first 4 issues for how much story it managed to pack into each issue and how well it set everything up. So has Jason Howard, created a really good short story, or has he created the foundation for a longer series? So now, actually, as I look at it and I think about it, I maybe should have ranked it higher, but again, maybe I wanted something with a little more sense of humor and fun. It was getting pretty grim. Also, I enjoyed Amethyst, number 6, which is the end of this storyline, but it really changes things up for Amethyst. I wonder whenever they do the next iteration of Amethyst, which, could be years from now or months from now, but more likely years. She only shows up every few years in her own series, or every 8 or 9 or 10 or 15 years. But they've really, Amy Reeder, the writer-artist, has really left us in the end with a very changed situation in terms of Amethyst's relationship to the kingdom of Amethyst, to her parents. I don't want to spoil it too much more on the issue of her parents. And with the gem itself, Amethyst. So pretty radical, which makes me wish there was more to come. I think Amy Reeder had some great ideas here. I never really cottoned on to her portrayal of the character of Amethyst herself. I think that's been the problem. And there were also, this was a big climactic fight, but it wasn't 100% clear to me what was going on. Otherwise, I really like the art and the color and everything, and the essential story is really great. And now that I've discovered what she was up to and so much twisting and undoing of the Amethyst universe, it kind of, part of me wants to really like this more than I did in the actual reading of it. Not that it was terrible, because we are in the middle, despite the numbering here, we're in the middle of the pack. That was number 9. At number 8 is Stillwater. I know this is a big favorite with a lot of discerning fans. To me, it's a good but not great book. I think my initial problem with it, with issue 1, was that I did not relate to the characters at all. I didn't really like them very much. The 2 guys. Now, one of them is gone, and the other is kind of, he's in a situation now. The story seems to be more about the situation that he's in now and what we find out about his whole life, more than who he is as a person. So I do find the situation compelling, and playing out with this idea of small town where no one ever dies as long as you don't leave town, and all the implications of that, from what happens to children, how is law and order, and who makes the decisions for the city, and all that. It's very interesting. It's an interesting comic. I'm not madly in love with it, but I like it. So I'm going to be sticking with Stillwater for the unforeseen future. Then I put Resonant in at number 7. Oh no. That rarely happens. I know I don't take as good care of my comics as most people. But this is probably a 50-cent comic already. Not that it isn't really a great comic. I really debated on how high up to put this, but my own enjoyment of it was limited by the fact that it has been a long time since the previous issue, and this totally just picks up on the cliffhanger of the previous issue and all the threads of the story. So it's going to read great in trade when all of the issues come out. I saw the creators on Bruce and Stephanie's comic book channel. They were interviewing them. They said there's definitely going to be 10 issues. There are 5 more issues of that planned in the writer's head, or maybe even scripted out, but they're a separate story that probably will never see the light of day. Anyway, those 10 issues, when they all come out, probably will read very well, judging by the now 6 issues that we have. But that long gap between issue 5 and issue 6 made this a big catch-up for me. I remember loving the art. They got a new penciler, but the same colorist, and the coloring is awesome. And the new artist does a great job. I remember loving the previous artist, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name. The new artist is a woman named Skylar Patridge, and I have a feeling she's going to be a rising star. It sounds like after this project, she's pretty booked up on a whole bunch of other projects. So it'll be interesting to see where she goes from here. But yeah, I think the other thing is my other excuse for not rating this near the top of my pile. What I do is as I'm trying to figure out the ranking, I make 3 piles. The ones I definitely thought were low down, the middling ones, and all of the ones that could be candidates for number 1. And I put this in the middling pile, and I think, again, for the grimness of the story, there's no humor or light touches, and it's that Christmas spirit makes it harder for me to read these things. Perhaps the same with We Live. Although I think We Live that was the dividing line. Resonant to We Live, the pile of books that I made my pile of top books before I sorted them out more thoroughly. So I put We Live at number 6. As someone has sort of said, I can't remember who, maybe it was Bob, or maybe it was Rockin' Robbie, that these are each issue is sort of a standalone, and I can see that, although it feels a little more connected than that to me. But the tone changes, the energy, the version of the horror that we get has kind of changed with each issue. In fact, in the first issue, things weren't so horrific, and things have become much more horrific. But I really enjoyed this, but it does seem like they pack so much in, and yeah, part of me as I think Bob or someone else said, sorry Bob if it wasn't you, it would be nice if this was 2 issues, that there was a little more room. They probably are racing the clock with an Aftershock comic. They probably were told, well, you definitely can have 6 issues, or you can definitely have 12 or something, and that'll be it. I am less and less sure where it's going, and I now realize of the children we're following, only one of them has this special armband which will allow them to go to the other planet. So the others are just bringing this little boy to wherever the launch pad is, if they can make it, if they can get him there, and then we'll still be doomed on this horrific future Earth. And I think the problems with the Earth are biological experiments gone wrong that have basically caused mankind to be wiped out, and a new kind of biology to start taking over the planet. Anyway, beautiful comic, very grim. Also on the grim side, One Sen Future. It's getting grimmer. It still has a bit of a sense of humor, so I like that. And this issue I put at, this is Once and Future number 14. My goodness, we've been 14 issues with Once and Future. It's already a long run for a Boom comic. And I put it at number 5. It was excellent. Excellent art and coloring, as always. To repeat myself, there's an incredibly intense scene where the grandma sits down with a dying man. I think he's some kind of white supremacist, and he's just basically been killed, and he's dying, and she's trying to get information out of him, and that there's about 4 pages devoted to it, and it was very intense and disturbing and powerful writing, and maybe took away the lighter side of this comic, or maybe this comic is just going to keep getting darker. And again, you know, I would have ranked it even higher, although it's definitely in my top pile, but I wanted something cheerful, which I just wasn't getting out of comics. What is wrong? There aren't more cheerful, fun comics. Also very grim and very brilliant, in my mind, is American Ronin, which I put at number 4. Could easily have been a number 1 in some weeks. I think I've put American Ronin at number 1 before. The art's amazing. Like all AWA Upshot comics, the coloring and the art is a little, I wish it was a little rougher. It's almost too slick. But fantastic storytelling nonetheless, and cool coloring. Dean White's the colorist. ACO or ACO is the artist. The great Peter Milligan, the classic weird comics writer from Vertigo, is the writer. This is, the story of evil corporations that run the world and the assassins that work for them. It's familiar, but it's done so well, and it's so intense in this one. It's interesting art-wise how many panels are these close-ups of things. So you almost feel like you're not seeing the whole picture of the action, and it makes for an extremely intense read. I think it's very intentional, and I think it's very effective, although at times I'm almost like I can't breathe. I want a big, distant action shot. Although we do, like, that was a nice breathing moment, this splash page, where we get some Piazza, I assume in Italy. Yeah, great comic. Look, I think it said there's 5 issues. Is that what I read somewhere? I don't see it. Issue 3 of 5. Yeah, 5 issues. So I'm still really rooting for another 5-issue season or what have you from American Ronin. Immortal Hulk, number 3. I really had trouble now from American Ronin on deciding who would be number 1. I love this issue of Immortal Hulk, number 41. We get a big fight between Ben Grimm and what maybe we should now call Baby Hulk, this kind of wasted away version of the Hulk, who I don't know how he can fight at all. But all of this is that weird body stuff that we've been seeing over and over in the Immortal Hulk. He's fighting Ben Grimm, and he's not got any intelligence. He's that Hulk, I guess, from the classic Bronze Age days that I remember. Me Hulk, me want to be alone. Why not humans leave me alone? It took me a while to get used to the way Joe Bennett drew the Thing, and I particularly didn't like the Thing's costume, but that is totally nitpicking. And I loved it when eventually the Hulk just turns into Joe Fixit, the human version of Joe Fixit, I guess in Bruce Banner's body, and they sit down and they have a meal together and talk things out. I do kind of wish the Fantastic Four played a role in this some more. Maybe because I love the Fantastic Four, and this is one of my favorite Marvel comics of ages. So I'd love to see more Fantastic Four in here. But anyway, a great issue, and kind of felt like a one-and-done story, except the last 2 pages, which lead us on to some next level of conflict. Really, really good. Okay, so I I ranked this really high at number 2, although I battled with myself over it. This is issue 2 of Cutting Edge. It's the second half, I believe, of the first European album of this Cutting Edge series. I'm not sure if it was called Cutting Edge in Europe. And I heard someone say they read it in France, although the creators are Italian, I believe. Francisco Dimitri and Mario Alberti. So I don't know the publishing history of it. It is brilliant and beautiful, and it's like a giant puzzle box. It's hard to read because it's been shrunk down to American comic book size, and it really, especially like the word balloons, they need to be. So I recommend that you wait for this to be published in hardback. But I enjoyed it so much, I'm going to get the next issues anyway, which will start, I think, the next album of here. I think there's a picture of it. Yeah, so there's issue 3. The thing I liked the least was the cover. But and it's not a horrible cover, but I don't know. It's not appealing to me. It doesn't represent the tone and the feel of this comic. I have to say, maybe because I had too much to read and I was rushed and I was looking at all these tiny panels, there were certain subtleties of what happened and what was going on that I felt I had to guess at a little bit, or I didn't quite grasp everything. But I still loved it so much that, and I'm usually someone who gets really picky about, wait a minute, I didn't understand that. That means that means this comic book pissed me off. But I got beyond that with this. This is thick. I don't know. It feels like maybe 50 pages. So the first trade of it, based on 2 issues, can be 100 pages or more. But probably big album-sized pages. Hopefully they'll publish it that way, and I'll probably double dip. If there were any flaws here, it was that it's a little bit humorless, and it is the characters are in themselves a bit humorless and overly serious, and they don't feel totally like fleshed out people. But that's being really picky because it's got so many characters and it's such an interesting puzzle box. Yeah, and there's other implications of things that I'm not sure if we're in a world where magic exists or it doesn't, and the implications of this exactly this woman's. I think we're supposed to be kind of a mystery to unravel about this woman character who's one of the team, who's one of the richest women in the world, I guess. Her superpower is money, although she turns out to have a lot of other skills too. Anyway, there's a lot of questions, but I'm drawn in and I'm eager to read some more. So I almost put that at number 1. I almost put that at number 5. It was hard to read in that small size. And I had saved it, because it was so long, I'd saved it near the end, and then I felt like, I'm running out of time. But at number 1, a big surprise to me, but probably touched by my desire for more fun, was the King in Black one-shot, The Immortal Hulk. It is written by Al Ewing, the author of The Immortal Hulk, and it is drawn by Aaron Kuder. And even this cover, which is my number 1 cover of the week too, is drawn by Aaron Kuder. I can't recall, I've always liked Aaron Kuder, but I can't recall being so blown away by his art before. It's called Black Christmas, and it's really just the story of that same baby Hulk character encountering one of these venomized creatures from outer space who's, I guess, beginning their invasion of Earth. I don't know, because I'm not reading the King in Black crossover event. But as you can see, there's no dialogue. I don't even know, throughout the entire issue, I don't even know if there's any special effects sounds. But Aaron Kuder makes it sing. It's a bit, you know what, the coloring looks a bit darker than I would have liked, but I guess I was able to work with it. And otherwise, it's kind of cool coloring. I'm looking forward to when this does come on my Marvel Unlimited app to look over it again digitally, because it's so much fun. So it just tells a cool story of a violent fight encounter between the Hulk and the the symbiote that he is fighting. It's not so much like what's on the cover, even though I love the cover, since there's no King in Black. The King in Black himself doesn't show up at all. But really good. And you know, also fighting the odds, you know, you wouldn't think I would list part of a little event side book as my top book. And I'm not really always taken by dialogueless comics, because I do like the mix of words and pictures so much. And yeah, what else? Anyway, so, and it was I guess it's technically a Christmas story. Takes place in a not a shoe store, a toy store mostly. But yeah, I loved it. Had a lot of fun with that. So does it mean I should get any other offshoot books from the King in Black series? Tell me if you know of any other ones that are good, that stand by themselves. So yeah, that was pretty much it. I'm probably going to go look for some more comics from the days when comics were more fun to read right now. But probably keep reading too much of the news and depressing myself. So for now, that's it. If I don't see you before Christmas, have a great Christmas. If you do celebrate Christmas, and then the New Year's is coming up. I know Hanukkah just ended. I hope if you celebrate Hanukkah, you enjoyed that. And I'll talk to you all again soon.